In my previous video, I talked about cognitive biases, and in this one, I will be talking about logical fallacies. Because philosophy is all about making and assessing arguments, philosophers have defined many types of logical fallacies, mistakes in thinking, or faulty forms of argument. Here I will quickly explain some of the most common logical fallacies, which I have organized into 5 groups as follows. 1. Some types of ad hominem and other bad rhetoric. 2. Confusions about causality. 3. Appeals to the wrong things. 4. Bad use of evidence. And finally, 5. Fallacies in logical structure. First, some types of ad hominem and other bad rhetoric. I have already explained the basic form of ad hominem in a previous video. Simply put, it is a form of counter-argument that attacks the messenger instead of the message. For example, let's assume that you don't like what I'm saying in one of my videos, but you can't think of a flaw in my reasoning. You may be tempted to ignore my point and even tell others to ignore it, because I'm just some random middle-aged white guy on YouTube. These statements may be true or false, that doesn't matter. None of those things have anything to do with the point I was making or the reasons I gave in support of that point. Using them as a reason to claim that I was wrong would be an ad hominem, an attack on my person, my character, or some other alleged fact about me. Not only would that be bad manners, it would be illogical. Who is presenting the argument has nothing to do with whether the argument is good or not. To show that an argument is implausible, you have to do exactly that, not point at irrelevant things, even if those things happen to be true. One fallacy that can be categorized as a subtype of ad hominem is called tu quoque. The phrase is Latin for you too. This fallacy is a bad but commonly used defense. If you accuse me of some failure, misdeed, or really criticize me in any way that I don't want to accept, I might try to turn the tables on you, so to speak, by accusing you of the same or possibly some other failing. Even if I were correct to point out that you are guilty of exactly the same type of thing that you are accusing of me committing, that would have nothing to do with whatever you had said, except that it might be admitting that, in fact, I was guilty of it. You could be a completely immoral person, and all your arguments full of lies and logical fallacies, but pointing those out would have absolutely no bearing on whether my argument was sound or not, or whether I was guilty of whatever the criticism stated or not. Another type of ad hominem is called poisoning the well. This is an attempt to discredit the target, the adversary in the debate, for example. The claim can be true or false, but the important thing is that it is being used to discredit the person in question in the eyes of the audience. This is often done before the other person has had the opportunity to present their side of the story. The audience can be told that the person has some questionable motives and therefore cannot be trusted. The claim can put the person in such a situation that they cannot really respond effectively, but as always with ad hominem, this is all irrelevant. For seeking the truth, the argument is the only thing that should really matter. distinguishing between poisoning the well or any type of ad hominem really on the one hand, and proper source criticism on the other can be difficult. It is important to apply source criticism and to be aware of the interests and biases of the sources. Such things can taint even scientific studies. Evidence from a biased source may not be reliable, but when evaluating the actual arguments, they don't matter. Sometimes people behave dishonestly and use bad rhetorical tricks to win the debate or to get their point of view accepted by others. Intentionally misleading the discussion is usually called the red herring fallacy. It is a bad argumentation because the purpose of doing this is to bog down the discussion by wasting time on irrelevant things. It is used to distract others from the fact that no good arguments have been made. It can be an evasion, such as a politician pretending to answer a question from a journalist by rambling on at length about irrelevant things. It can also be nitpicking questions and demands for definitions used in the opponent's argument. In both cases, it is stalling and leading away from the central issue. The tu quoque fallacy can also be seen as a type of red herring because it is an attempt to misdirect the discussion. The Strawman fallacy is creating a caricature of an opinion or perhaps even a theory, and then arguing against that caricature. It is much easier, of course, to attack a simplified and incorrectly presented version than the real thing. And obviously, the criticism that applies to the caricature probably doesn't really apply to the real thing. So it's a fallacy. The middle ground fallacy, also known as the argument to moderation, is based on the misguided notion that the truth, or the best course of action, is always halfway between the extremes. There really is no logical reason to think so. The most obvious problem with this argument is that anyone can manufacture outrageous opinions in order to shift the halfway point between the extremes. There are already such horrible views out there that often nothing worse needs to be invented anymore to show how disastrous this fallacious way of thinking is. Just think of the far right, for example, real Nazis, who want to have minority groups eliminated or exterminated. The other extreme wants the state to guarantee a fairly good quality of life for everyone. Is the halfway point that only some members of minorities are killed and some people get social benefits the right thing to do, the best policy to adopt? Surely not. The real best choice has to be sought with imagination that does not have to be limited by what the mainstream sees as acceptable, the Overton window. It also cannot be a bad compromise between a good policy and a horrible policy, even if the masses have been misled to think that the horrible policy is somehow acceptable. That sort of thing has led to atrocities, including mass murder and genocide in the past. We should learn at least something from history. The media has often been guilty of a form of this fallacy, better called false balance in this context of the media, presenting two opposing views as if they were equally justified. The first problem with this decision is, of course, that there is no reason to choose just two opinions. There are all kinds of crackpots, some even among scientists. The duty of a journalist is to help the audience get a balanced and properly informed view of things. They have no good reason to present pseudoscience along with real science. They should typically only present the consensus view of science. There are unethical opinions and ideas that do not deserve to be given any time on the air, even in the interest of a balanced representation.